Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Steve from Life, Liberty, and Adventures. Today's video is going to be about a DIY 4-tire inflation system that I'm going to build, and I'm also going to test it out compared to my 60-gallon Ingersoll Rand compressor at the end. So let me get the parts and lay them out on the bench and I'll show you what I got. Okay, so laid out here on the bench are all the parts I'm going to use to build this system. And let's start here on the left. And what we have is just a 50-foot section of 3/8 air hose. Got that from Amazon. You can choose to use whatever brand you like. This is actually the Smart Flex brand. It has 1/4-inch pipe threads on both ends. We're going to use those as well, but we're going to be cutting this up into sections. I'll show you a little bit of detail about that here in a second. And underneath it is a Harbor Freight Apache brand 4800 plastic case. Everything's going to fit inside of there so that this system will be portable, so I can take it and use it in Roseanne's Jeep, or take it to someone else's Jeep, or even a pickup truck. I'll show you the details on the lengths of the hoses and everything, but it should be pretty versatile. I'm not really sure that I wanted to go with a onboard install. That's why I went this route with the case, so I can take it along anywhere I'd like to go. So like I mentioned, I'm going to be cutting up this hose into different sections, and I'm going to be adding in these 1/4-inch pipe thread barb adapters, and then these ferrules here, they will get crimped onto the hose to crimp over the fitting. This is the crimp tool, vice grip that goes along with those ferrules to connect each of the hose sections to the valve stems. These are Haltech 5265 standard board grip lock-on air chucks. Those are from Amazon as well. Here's a pressure gauge I got from Amazon. It's a Meanlin. I believe it is 0 to 50 psi, 1/4-inch pipe thread. Here's a couple of ball valves, 1/4-inch pipe thread as well. Everything I'm using here is 1/4-inch pipe thread. These are going to help me control the flow of air where I want it to go. And continuing down the front here is the a manifold that I got off of Amazon as well. I'll show you a little bit of detail how that's going to work. But it's got 5 ports on the bottom. It's got a through port on each side, plus 1 port up on the top. I'll show you how that's going to work here in a minute. And like I mentioned before, this is going to be a portable setup, and this is a 30 amp 12 volt lead with a fuse in it that I'm going to be using to hook up to the ARB compressor I'll talk about here in a second. This is a Street T 1/4-inch MPT with 1 male and 2 females, and also 2 1/4-inch pipe thread with 3 females. Here's a little box of 1/4-inch pipe thread plugs and a couple of 1/4-inch pipe thread unions, or otherwise known as close nipples, and then a handful of ARO style quick couplers. Those match all of the air hose quick couplers that I have in my garage, so I wanted to keep the same thing. And also I chose to go with the ARB single high output compressor. The cost difference between the single and the twin is pretty striking, so at this point I don't really need the capacity of the twin, but I chose to save several $100s and go with the single, but we'll see how that works. It should be okay. I'm only running 35-inch tires, and I'm not going to be filling them completely up from zero. One thing to note about the single is it has a 50% duty cycle rating, which should be okay for my application, but that means that for every hour of runtime, this needs 2 hours of off time, or if you want to look at it this way, for every half an hour that it's running, you need to leave it sit another half an hour. So that's 50% duty cycle. So here's a little sketch that I put together for how this is going to lay out on the Jeeps. 4 tires of the Jeep with the spare. Here's a fan noting the front of the Jeep. So the Wrangler Unlimited has a 118.4 inch wheelbase, and I'm going to use the 2 ends of the 50-foot air hose that have the 1/4 inch pipe thread on already, and I'm going to use those to go from the rear tire up to 1/4 inch pipe thread T, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then I'm going to cut a 30-inch section of hose for a leader off of the front tires. Same thing on the other side, and then also I'll have an 8-foot section or 96-inch section of hose to go from the T up to each end of the manifold. Now the manifold, I'm going to plug each end and plug the 2 middle ones, and then the very center one is going to be where the pressure gauge is mounted, and then out the front is going to be the inlet where the ARB compressor is going to be supplying air pressure to the system. So with all of the hose lengths added up here, that should give me about a 6-foot or 72-inch lead from the compressor to the ball valve, and also each of the left and right lines have a ball valve in them as well, so you can isolate the left and the right. So that's pretty much a bird's eye view of what I'm planning to do. So let's get started. We're going to start with the hose and get those pieces cut, and then start laying out everything on the floor. Just one pro tip: when you're installing Teflon tape, you always want to go in the direction that the fitting will be installed on, so that you don't unwind the tape as you're installing the fitting, whatever that fitting might be. So these are clockwise threads, so I was going in a clockwise motion wrapping it, and when I put this on, I'm also going in a clockwise motion. More Teflon tape. This pressure gauge also comes with adapters to other sizes, but we're just using 1/4 inch pipe thread. gauge is made for. It's a nice liquid filled one, so hopefully it works out well. As you can see, the nipple adapter already comes with thread sealant on it, so I'm not going to put any Teflon tape on that. Okay folks, so let's take a look at the air compressor here. So this is the high output onboard air kit CKMA12. I ordered the 12 volt version. Put that aside for now. Comes with a whole bunch of bolts and screws, and looks like a pressure switch and another rocker switch and a bracket and some electrical connectors. And here is the filter for the air side, air intake side. And here is the compressor. Very nice quality. Looks really well done. I like it. Supposedly if you loosen these two screws, you can rotate the compressor body within the blue mounting bracket. And also I believe you can do the same with this output manifold here. If you loosen this screw, I think you can spin this around to get your output. This is the output port right here. This is the intake port where your filter goes. But I believe you can also move this around, rotate it. So this is really versatile in where you can locate it and how the ports get positioned. So also inside the box is a relay harness, big wiring harness, and that comes with an inline fuse already and a bunch of connectors. I've already mounted the relay in there, so I'm not sure, like I said before, I'm not sure if I'm going to permanently mount this in my Jeep. So I'm going to probably use the harness because it has the pressure switch in it and relay. I'm just going to hook it up to power right off the battery terminals with this guy. This is rated for 30 amps. I believe this system here, this compressor, draws significantly less, so that should be plenty big for this compressor. So I'll probably end up taping off with electrical tape any of these loose connectors like this one, just so they don't possibly short on something or touch something. I'll probably tape off any of the other connectors I'm not going to use. So I've installed some Teflon tape on the threads of the filter. You're just going to line that up, spin that in, and just tighten it up by hand. It's as simple as that for that guy. So I just looked up the specs in the installation guide in the manual for this compressor, and it shows under no load the current draw is 12 amps, and under load it is 23 amps for this compressor. So my 30 amp harness here with the alligator clips should work out just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I'm going to mount this. This is, like I said, from Harbor Freight. It's relatively inexpensive and it's going to work just fine for what I need it for. So I'm going to be taking out all the foam. Like that. that. We don't need this. So my plan is to mount this in the back, just like that. I'm going to drill some holes through the bottom of it, so that when I carry this thing by the handle, most of the weight is centered over the middle of it on the bottom half. So this bracket that's in the parts bag, this goes on the outside. After I drill the holes through, I can put that bracket on to help secure the compressor to the case itself. And then I'm going to also rotate, like I mentioned before, you can rotate the compressor within this blue mounting band, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit, and I'm probably going to rotate this a little bit so that my outlet ports look a little bit nicer and align a little better for the way I want them. So that's the plan for that. Snug that for now. I want that pointed up. Because eventually this straight T is going to go on here, and this pressure switch that came in the package is going to go right on the side. Again, this will be mounted like that, and then the outlet for the hose will come right up the top. So I want this down low as possible in here, so that when you close the lid on top of this, that there's room here for that connector, whatever I choose to use. And also tilt that over to the side. Anyway, so that's the plan. So this tape is just going to put that on here to help me lay out where I want to drill the holes. I'm going to use black Sharpie marker to mark the holes, and that doesn't show up too well on black plastic, so hence the blue painter's tape. Looks like we have, I'm going to try and center it as best I can. So that's about 4 1/4. So 2 1/8. 2 1/8 over. So that's the center line. From the other side, yep, we're good. Okay. So now this guy. Make sure. Maybe below that a little bit. Let's find the center line of this thing. Okay, so there's the center line of that. So then Okay, I moved the holes down a smidge from where I initially set them, just to make sure the compressor is down far enough, or as much as I can get it, so I leave enough room at the top. So I'm using a 1/4-inch drill bit. So we'll go ahead and drill the first hole. That in and drill the next hole using that as a template. I'm going to tighten that up first. Might as well tighten it, right? And I'm just tightening this up without the compressor on for the time being, just to hold everything in place. Put this one on, then I'll drill the last 2 holes. Right. Go ahead and take that off and be right back. Okay, also to mount the compressor, it comes with 4 carriage bolts with a square underneath the head, and that square will interface with the slot in here, and it will hold this from turning as you're tightening the nut on the outside. So we're going to use those. This will be fun getting all 4 of these lined up. Okay folks, it is mounted in there. It was a fight, but I got it. It seems to be mounted pretty sturdy. I'm happy with it. Turn around and show you the back side. So there's that plate. I'm going to cut these off flush with the lock nuts later, but it wouldn't matter anything if I laid this on a flat floor, because the bottoms of the bolts wouldn't touch the ground anyway. But I'm just going to cut the excess off a little bit later. But for now, it's mounted, and yeah, I'm going to do some adjustments here to get this a little bit lower. I'm going to loosen this up, and I'm going to spin that around, and yeah, it should be good. So I'm using a 4mm Allen wrench on these two screws. Just gonna loosen them up just a little bit. And then this should rotate. Let me loosen a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so that's all the further we can go, which is fine. So I'm just going to bring it up just a little bit so it's not touching the back. And I really don't care if this is at an angle right now because I'll rotate that. But here we go. So I'll snug these back down again. You don't need to go super tight on these, just snug. Okay, that's good. There's clearance there. Now I'm gonna loosen this bolt on the side. I'm gonna make it so this is pointing straight up. Okay, so I've got this street tee with Teflon tape applied. I got that installed to the end cap here. I had to loosen a little bit so that it could clear this bracket on the end as I was spinning it down. So I'm going to loosen this back up again and rotate that whole manifold so everything is straight up. I'll just put this in for a little reference so I can look at it. Looks good to me. I'll tighten this down again. Like I said, if I'm not happy with it later on, I can always redo that. I'll put a little bit of Teflon tape on the pressure switch. Again, just going in the same direction that it gets installed. Don't unwind the tape. Okay, well that's not gonna work. So I have to back off of this thing a little bit so that it's out a little bit like that. There we go. Tighten that. Actually, this may work. Sure enough, from my days as a John Deere heavy equipment mechanic, this is a oil pressure sending unit socket that also works on that because it's the same size. That worked out fantastic. So we'll just tighten that down. Again, you don't have to go too tight because I'm going to actually hold this a little bit to give it some support while I'm torquing that. Okay. I'll just spin that in a little bit. Okay. Now all I'm doing is on this nipple, putting tape on it. And that's going to get installed into the quick coupler and installed in there. Grab a wrench. And again, I'm going to give support to the street tee. I'm going to tighten this down. be it. Let's make sure the lid closes. It should. Get those out of the way. Perfect. Look at that. I can't tell if it's hitting or not, so it should be good. I love it when a plane comes together. So yeah, then the hose is just gonna fit right down in there onto that coupler and attach to the rest of the system. So in this harness, I'm just gonna undo it. Well, they wanted to make sure this didn't come apart. Well, they did a nice job packaging it, so I can't complain. I think this is a harness for in your vehicle in case you want to run ARB lockers, that it's already got all the connectors and everything, but I'm not using it for that, so a lot of this is just gonna be laying inside of here. So here's the power cord to the battery. This one. Okay, I have to read up what that one does. But it looks like I need a T-style connector, and I would bet money that this is the one right here, close to the relay. So that's what we will do. We'll hook this up to that. Okay, that's connected. I might permanently mount this relay in here at some point. I don't know. I'll have to figure something out for that. There like that. And get some electrical tape after a bit and tape that down. Okay, so now we are left with the power wires. And there's the fuse. And I need a connector, I believe. These two are for the pressure switch. And I have to make sure these things stay safe, because I'm gonna lay all the other hose and stuff in here. Alright. I might do some quick connect here in the future, or make another connection with soldering, but for right now I just want to see if this works. Okay, let's take over the battery and see what happens. Okay, I've got the kit here in the front of the Jeep, and I'm going to go ahead and connect the clamps from that kit. We'll do the positive first. Now this isn't going to run very long because it's not pressurizing a lot of volume before that pressure switch is going to kick it off, hopefully. So here we go. Guess I need to add the switch into the system. Alright, be right back. So I'm using brass ferrules and brass barbed fittings to make my hose connections, to make it look a little bit more finished and professional looking. So these are available on Amazon, and the way you size these is you have to determine what the size of the hose outside diameter is going to be once you put the brass fitting in there. And all I did was insert that a little bit, and then I took my dowel calipers and I measured the outside diameter of that, and then I picked the next size up fitting brass ferrule for the OD, or I'm sorry, the ID that will go over the OD of the hose, completed hose. So they have a bunch of different sizes on Amazon. It's from a company called Interstate Pneumatics, and I thought it's a really nice product. And then these get, once this is assembled, then these get crimped with a tool and it looks complete. It doesn't have any extra clamps or things hanging off of it. The way you install these is the barbed fittings is I like to take just a little bit of grease and put it on the ID of the hose. It wasn't even very much, but I use synthetic grease. And then you take the ferrule and you slip it over the hose, and then you just simply push everything together. Make sure everything's tight. And then you get the crimp tool and you crimp that brass ferrule on the hose, and you're done. So I'm getting back to wiring on the ARB air compressor, and one thing I learned about the kit that I got, the CKMA12, is that the harnesses that are included in this kit assume that you are also using a front and rear air locker in your Jeep. And I am not using those because I have a Rubicon and it has electric air lockers, and I don't have plans to at the moment. So that made the harness a little difficult because the wiring diagram assumes that you're going to be hooking other switches into this small harness that is supposed to go inside the Jeep. And while it did come with the isolating switch, you can see there's a tag for it and the connectors. I'm not using this harness, so I had to figure out, looking at the wiring diagram that comes in the manual. While it's a great diagram, I had to decipher it and figure out what wires I needed to power this unit and also use the switch, the isolating switch. So what I've determined is that the red and the black wires off of this other switch, they used to have blade type connectors on the ends of them that were supposed to go into this connector, the plastic connector that's included in the kit. they get inserted in the back of the connector, and then in the Jeep they would connect up with this plug. But I'm not using all that. So, as you can also see, if you're using air lockers, you're also going to have two solenoids on the top of the unit that also get connected. I'm not using those. So the only things I'm using are this relay and the pressure switch, and I'm probably going to use the factory switch here, but I will probably mount that on the case somewhere so that I don't have to handle the switch. I can just flip it on the side. Maybe I'll put it on the side. I'm not really sure yet. But so anyway, just to prove that this does work, I have to also, let me set the camera down for a second. So for right now, for testing, I have a fitting in the quick coupler that I installed on the outlet. So I'm gonna use a little jumper wire that I made up to supply power to the switch and the circuitry, and then I'll show you that it runs. So all I'm gonna do is this heavy, looks to be a 10 gauge wire. I'll have to check on that. I'm not 100% sure, but looks to be 10 gauge. I'm gonna reach in here with my little jumper wire so I can get power to this end, and then I'm gonna touch it to this bottom connector here, and you can see that the switch actually lit up. So once I flip the switch up, the compressor is going to start, and it's going to keep running because I have an open air fitting on there. Here we go. Alright, so that works. So now the pressure switch is in the circuit to shut off the compressor once it reaches 100 psi. That's what they have listed in the manual. So I'm going to take that fitting out, and now all it's going to do is build pressure inside this T and inside the coupler, and this pressure switch is going to shut the system off. So it'll take a couple seconds. Alright, power on. Alright, see, pressure switch works. Take the power off, and I'm going to put the coupler in. You'll feel you'll hear the air come out. So everything works. It's just that I'm not going to, I don't want to cut up these harnesses from the factory any more than I already have done. So I'm going to make my own harness that is going to connect into, I'm going to cut these back off again, and I'm going to make my own harness that is going to connect into the alligator clips that go up to the battery, these wires. And then I'm going to go from the power in the ground, and then I'm going to go from the pressure switch and the relay and also the main switch. I'm going to make my own little harness. So anyway, I'm going to cut wires and clip on some connectors, and I'll be back. One more thing I'm also going to do to make this installation a little bit cleaner is I don't necessarily like how this pressure switch is pointing out like that. I can't push it back any further because the housing of the switch actually will hit the housing of the compressor. So I'm planning to wrap all the hose up in this area, and these are kind of vulnerable hanging out here. So I'm gonna be installing a 45-degree elbow in here. I'm going to take the pressure switch back out, put an elbow in here, and then put the switch into this end so that I can swing this back, and then the switch is actually going to be pointed up to this direction, so this area will be more open for the hoses. So I'm also going to make that small little change. Okay, so I've got the wiring harness figured out, and it's not tidy in there yet, but that's going to be later. So I wanted to show you exactly how I did this. So the power and ground wires come from the battery. I don't have them hooked up now, but you can see there's alligator clips. And then if we follow the power wire, it comes into the relay, and also have a 12-volt feed off of that one that feeds the main isolation switch. And then I have the pressure switch with a power wire from the isolation switch, and then that has the output from the pressure switch over to the main relay. And then once also the ground wire, the main ground wire, goes back to the ground of the pump air compressor, and there's also a splice off of that one to provide a ground to both the relay and the isolation switch. So I'll go and connect that now, and you can see how that's going to work. So we always hook up the power first, hook up the ground. The light is on the switch already. Let me put that connector back in. So this isn't going to shut off right away, so because it's just going to keep pumping. So there you have it. And there's also a fuse connection, 30 amp, that's protecting the pump. And there's also another fuse in the line directly up here off the main power. So I have, it's kind of redundant, but I made use of this other one to get me a power feed off the relay to the pump. So anyway, I'm gonna tidy that up a little bit later, and I'm gonna use it now and do some testing with it. So this is the Interstate Pneumatics crimping tool that I'm gonna have to use for these ferrules that I got, because that other tool that I bought that looks like a vice grip only has 2 size options in it. So I had to return that because the larger size in it, the ferrule wouldn't even start to get crimped in it, and the other size was way too small. It would crush the heck out of this thing. So bottom line, it wasn't right. That's shame on Interstate Pneumatics for not really describing what the tool size crimps are for. But anyway, this is the model H8, and you can see it comes with 5 die numbers that correspond to 5 different sizes. The inside diameter largest is 0.680, and then it goes down to 0.63, 0.58, 0.53, 0.48. So the outside diameter of the ferrules that I have measure approximately 6.665. Depends on where you measure it. 0.666, 0.670, 0.667, 0.665. So obviously they're not perfectly round, but at any rate, if you look inside this tool, you can see the sizes of the dies from right to left. The farthest one on the left is the largest one, and then the next size down is farthest on the right, and they go smaller as you go left, except for the farthest one on the left. So based on that chart, I'm going to be using the number 1, because obviously this would provide no crimp at all. So I'm going to go with the number 1, which is the first one from the right. So when you get this thing, you're supposed to set it up where this screw on the inside left here, so that when the clamp lever is down, this screw is tight and all these dies are tight. Right now they're kind of loose, so you basically turn that screw into the last die or out, just whatever is gonna get it to where it's tight for your setup. So right now that's tight. So check it. Yep, doesn't bind. Okay, we're set to go. And also, I'm not sure if you can see, but on the inside of the dies there are 3 steps. 3 compression steps, I guess, or crimp steps, if you'll call it that. So when you put that ferrule in there, you want to have the remaining bit of the ferrule that comes out past the die on both sides. You want that to be even. You want those 3 rings to be pretty centered across the length of this, not counting the top radius, not counting the top radius of the ferrule. So we're going to go ahead and do this first one here. Always make sure that everything is pushed in as far as possible, and set that in there. Okay, I'm going to bring the clamp lever down. Also, the instructions say to turn it 90 degrees and crimp it one more time, so that's what we're going to do. So there you have it. It looks about as centered and even as it's going to get. I'm pretty happy with that. This tool worked out pretty well. Hopefully that's coming through on the camera. So I'm just gonna continue doing this to all of them, and then put my hoses together, final assembly, and should be good to go. Well, I got everything crimped and I pressurized the system with the air compressor, and I heard a couple of hissing spots, meaning I have a few leaks. So I got out some Windex and I started spraying around some connections, and what I found was that even though I used the die number 1.630 ID, I realized that I had to actually crimp mine to the number 2 die at 0.580, and that fixed all the leaks. So here you can see one of the crimps with the 580. You can see it's a little bit tighter, and I went in multiple places, so I would crimp and then turn it, crimp, turn it, crimp, turn it. I did that multiple times, so it got a good crimp all the way around. But the ARB air compressor cuts off, or the pressure switch turns it off at 100 psi. So I guess that die number 1 for this size of hose and ferrule wasn't quite good enough. So anyway, just a lesson learned there. I started out with the number 1, which I thought was going to be good, but turns out I needed to go to the number 2, the 0.580, and that fixed all my leaks. So I pulled the Jeep outside, and now that all the connections are tight and I don't have any large leaks, there may be a slight small leak here and there, but I'll work on that later. It's nothing major. I'm going to do a test on how long it takes to deflate all 4 tires, and then also I'm going to do a test on inflating them from about 15 up to maybe 31, 32, something like that. So anyway, everything fits in here. So if you'll notice, one change I did make is I changed out the pressure gauge to a digital tire pressure gauge that has a range up to 200 psi. The other one I had in the system was maxed out at 60, and as I mentioned before, the air compressor pressure switch kills the compressor at 100 psi, so I had to make a change there. Take the valve stem cap off. You're going to do this to all four. And you basically push on and push that clip forward, and it's locked on there. Do that to all four tires. Just give it a little bit of a walk around. I got all four tires connected into the system. See how everything connects. This is the passenger side. There's the driver's side front. Driver's side rear. And grab the manifold with the quick couplers. Just attach them. Make sure the valves are shut. Turn the pressure gauge on. I'm actually going to flip these side to side. Okay. So let's turn them on. So right now it looks like everything's at 31.3, 31.4. Call it 31, close enough. So I'm going to get out my phone. So at 2.5 minutes, we're down to 15.7. 2 minutes, 36 seconds, checking pressure every minute. So that went from 31 psi, 31.3, 31.4, down to, call it 16 in 2.5 minutes. So then to hook it up to inflate the tires back up to street pressure, all we do is take this short extension, connect it to the other side of the manifold, and then connect the other side into the compressor itself. Then we take the harness that I built, get the hood popped open here. Trying to do this one-handed kind of sucks. Those red line struts really comes in handy. Expose that. These two leads. A little bit more wire. Always connect the positive first. I'm going to do is first turn on the compressor to pressurize the short section. You can see the manifold inlet is closed, so no air will go out to the tires yet. Okay, so that pumped that short section hose up to 100 psi, and then it shut off the pump. So next what we're going to do, we're going to go up from 16 to 32, and we'll see how long that takes. All I got to do is open the manifold here and hit the start button, because my 2 lines out to the tires are still open. Okay, so here we have about 31.5 psi in just under 10 minutes. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's 9 minutes 47 seconds with a couple of stoppages along the way to check the pressure. So anyway, there you have it. Just under 10 minutes to deflate or inflate all 4 tires back from 16 up to 31 psi. Not bad.